All right, so each of you has about 25 minutes. It'd be great if you maybe left 10 or 15 comments and suggestions. So, turning it over to you. Oh, Mike wanted to announce something.
Just got off the phone with you. Good insight there. And she would like to get a couple of dates that we could make that presentation. So, if you guys just figure out what your schedules are and give me 3 dates, within the next, month, let's say. Okay. And, so you could do that after Tim's class, just come up with a couple of days and just pop them in and do it. Thank you.
I started out with my work plan. Although we have thesis, I know we have a lot of other classes with like presentations and deadlines that we already know of. So I decided to do a work plan and put in those deadlines. So as I did it, I figured out that by the time I should have at least 5 of my literature reviews finished by the first week in November, because there would be a lot more deadlines after that point. And then there's always the Christmas break to still work on getting stuff done. But I have a question about when it should be finished. I was thinking probably doing reviewing things like the first 2 weeks in January when we come back. But would that mean that the thesis, all the written stuff is finished, or you're just probably starting to write about your application?
Well, the university begins to require things somewhere around midterm next semester. They do tend to be drafts. If you want particulars, you can look up manuals online, graduate studies.
I started looking through a lot of their stuff. They had a lot to do with, I guess, the layout, how the table of contents will capitalize and margins.
Well, it's in your interest to be as done with as much as you can by the end of this course. To the extent things are still, say, unaddressed at all, you're beginning to back yourself in the corner. So one thing I would say is every one of the chapters in the report should be up and running. And some of them are going to be more complete. The things that can tend to be fairly complete are the literature search review, your precedent study, your choice of an application or a project, a little program and site analysis, early conceptualization on that. And that's something that we can push even further in terms of how your thesis theme applies to that. I think you can have a fairly decent draft of your table of contents, and abstract, and thesis diagram done. Your introduction can be largely done, except for maybe the end of it. Maybe you can't really push into conclusions yet, because that's going to tend to depend on how the project turns out. And then I think you also can be pretty far along in terms of your research and analysis. Those main topics that are the centerpiece of your thesis, that section of the thesis report will be really pushing into those things. That's pretty far along too. So one thing I'll say is, the more chapters you have up and running, the better. Some of them are going to be less draft and more finished than others. And that by allowing yourself to work on all of them together until they all fit together, you'll ensure that your thesis is integrated rather than a patchwork of independent subject. So that's a general guide on how you manage that up to you. If it turns out you don't get much done this semester, then you got to realize you back yourself to the point next semester.
Is it possible to just I'm focusing on certain architects, so would it be just possible to say I'm doing a literature review on a certain architect and then it has subheadings under it?
Yeah, but I think it'd be good to start with what you're doing. You open with your work plan. I'm not sure everybody here knows what your thesis is about. So I would recommend you start at the beginning and ease us into this rather than starting in the middle.
In my thesis, I would like to examine the initial stage of design to understand how the initial steps in the design process are influenced by the architect's design theory. In doing so, I hope to find the importance of representation of diagrams by various architects and how they influence their concepts. Each architect has unique design intent, and looking at their process and the different media they utilize, the outcome of the project, and the theory. I hope to get a better understanding of conceptual items. I started off looking at Bernard Schoen, and he has an entire compilation of all of his. He always starts with his concepts. He started off with white. The book is called Red is non-color. Do you want me to tell you why? He designed a lot of follies in the park, and all of them were red. And people kept asking him why red. So then all he said to them was, red is not a color. So he left it as a mystery for them to think about what it is. As I was going through a lot of the stuff, his concepts are pretty straightforward in terms of line weights. They're not like double lines, they're just single hand things. He don't go over black and white, like being sketchy. It leaves the person to interpret what it would be, like decoration, just the basic form of the building. It seems that a lot of his stuff are based on the outside of the building, and then he portrays that, try to get it into the building. For the application, I'm thinking of doing a museum. So I think that would allow me to. It has a simple program, first of all, and it would allow me to do some creative forms to work with. I haven't chosen a location yet, though. I feel that the location will really determine the materiality of the building. Shumi also highlights some of that stuff in this book. He calls it concept, context, and content. So that's also what I'm going to be looking at for all the other architects, how they basically how they think, and a lot of them kind of come up with their own theory and their play on words. His basic philosophy is not to follow everyone else. Like when they had all those different movements and he believed that it shouldn't be a style. It should just be up to the person to, you could take from art or philosophy or any other discipline, from politics. He was criticized for taking those things that aren't architecture and bringing them into architecture by other architects. Just telling them that art is art and so forth. That's basically as far as I reach so far.
Okay, let's see if anybody here's got comments or reactions to that. I got a couple of ideas.
So what did you do?
I'm trying to figure out the level of concept of different architects, the amount of detail they use in the actual first drawing, how it actually, how to build it, and so on. It's because some actually just have a lot of detail in their drawings. They don't leave anything to the interpret.
So is it like you're trying to figure out interpretation that goes from drawing to like physical manifestation? So you're tracking the conceptual process.
Yeah.
So
And possibly they're
You're trying to get the way they think and put it into one.
yes.
So it's like you're trying to find out the power of the concept.
Yeah. A lot of them probably just use the concept for the form, but then you also have to do a program and other things. The concept may not apply to be able to be applied to the program.
Who would you talk like? Who would you title be? Like how would you like term it up?
The title is, as it is now, it can be changed. Architectural thinking, conceptual thinking and architectural representation.
A couple of ideas come up for me. You may find a disconnect. I don't know whether this is going to be the case or not. You may find a disconnect between, on the one hand, what is clearly a legitimate thing to look at, the issue of conceptual thinking, representation, diagramming, parts and models, and the resulting schemes. I'm assuming you're looking at that. So you're not just going to look at diagramming, you're going to look at what their schemes look like too, maybe inverse some connections there. Your face says you're not sure.
What do you mean like scheme? You mean like what they're trying to accomplish?
Well, I guess what I'm saying is if all you're doing is looking into their conceptual diagramming and thinking, but you're not looking at any connectivities to the schemes they generate, then you're not really exploring the bridge between conceptual thinking and outcomes and schemes. So to me, when I hear you talk, you're looking at that membrane between thinking, diagramming, ideation, and the resulting plans that come out. If all you're doing is looking at the conceptual thinking, you can't really say anything about it other than this guy uses a thick pen, this guy uses a thin pen, this guy uses chipboard, and that guy uses color. It seems to me that your thesis to be valid and useful, you've got to look at the correspondence or the relationship between study mode and scheme outcomes. And so I'm saying that's a legitimate topic. What I'm wondering though, and only you will know this, is can you find enough stuff on that? If you can't, then to me something else you said might be an interesting, let's say, 2-degree shift in the way you're describing it, which was their ideas and their theories, where you drop the look at representation, you just look at their theoretical stances and their schemes, rather than saying, I'm going to focus on the diagrams and the conceptual doodles and that kind of stuff. Because what I'm wondering is, will you find enough on the doodle business to make it a thesis? And if you don't, then to me you might have an easier time with the architects who have declared what their ideas are, and to look at the relationship between the ideas and schemes rather than the doodles and schemes. See what I mean?
Yes.
And even that can be slippery, but it's easier to get at their idea systems because most of them, a lot of them are written things. You can also get their schemes. Thesis could be studying what they say in narrative form about what's important to them and what kind of schemes come out of those value positions and stances. That's one that I get. And I'm not saying you have a problem, I'm saying you might have a problem. The problem wouldn't be the legitimacy of the topic, the problem would be finding enough scholarship out there that has talked about this. That gives you something to look at. Because I'm not sure you should put yourself in a position of guessing what the relationship is. That really puts you way out on the land. Thesis doesn't. So that's when you get back to it. I want to hear what else the has to say. You all get what she's after? Looking basically at the design process. You're looking at the very beginning of it. Conceptually.
What was the definition of concept?
I've started to on that. And then I figured out that a lot of them were kind of old, so I was trying to also find some other ones.
Old is the right about
No, I mean like most of them are over 50. I haven't found any below 50, even 40 or 45.
So do you find that what architects start working as an architect is really the kind of what they do in the business?
Yes.
Is that approach between the street and farm, and it's not just a street project that means something to the farm?
It seems that they just already have the program and everything, so they're able to kind of feed off of the program and not just get the program.
No, what she's asking is, wondering, I'm guessing, is you may discover that it's not easily traceable path concepts. The concept may be the beginning point, and the process disappears, and lo and behold, the scheme comes up. So you might not be able to track a totally observable path from conceptual thinking and theoretical thinking to scheme. And that could be a discovery in the thesis. That to look at what these guys say and what they come up with, there's a disconnect. Well, that's a legitimate thesis finding. You're not looking to prove that there is a connection. You're looking to investigate the connection to see whether there is one and what its nature is. So it's important that you see this as an investigation and not proving something. You're not obligated to prove it.
I don't know if they would actually show us like their first concept, because that one isn't built. So the ones I'm actually seeing relate to the end product. So that may be a problem.
Well, then if you switch to the ideology thing, where you're not looking at conceptual doodles, you're just looking at their theory systems. To me, that's an easier task to find things in both camps. You know, if they're famous, you're certainly going to be able to find buildings they've done. And if they're famous, you're probably going to find what they've said, their value positions, and their theoretical stances are. So those are going to be two fairly easy sets of things. And then the task is going to be, what are the connections between these things? What I said earlier on is, I'm not sure you're going to find a whole lot about their conceptual pieces, their doodles, their marching diagrams. That could be a more slippery set of information to find, but you'll discover that. And you need to have this conversation with the chair to make sure that they're clear with it. Okay, did you have other questions before we move to the next?
Just another one about the graduate manual guidelines. I was reading that and it said that there's a limit on the amount of pictures you can put in. Does that refer to architectural pieces?
What's the limit?
They were saying like if you're using a certain sauce, then you could do like 10% of everything you can write about it.
I would do what you want to do and then check it against the manual. I wouldn't use the manual as something that makes you operate with the brakes on so that one is scared of what your process is. I would say, do your thesis, and then when you're pretty far along, look at the manual and then see. At least in terms of that particular issue. All right, let's do the next.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I got you.
He wants to record his facial expression.
Yeah. All right. So my topic is biomimicry. So how I started was like pretty much reading a bunch of books. And after a while, I kind of found like the topic I wanted to do. So I wanted to kind of my topic became designing with nature and desert climate. And so what I did, I pretty much looked into deserts on climates and around the United States and kind of try to figure out what works, which one I really wanted to work with. I pretty much spent like, I don't know, 3 weeks or something looking at different types of deserts. And then I say, well, I want to challenge myself. So I eliminated a bunch of the deserts like that really had vegetation, water, had resources. And I've kind of brought down myself to the Mojave Desert. And then I decided, well, there's 2 parts of the Mojave Desert that I could have done. It was the national park, the Death Valley National Park, or the Mojave National Preserve. And I looked into them again, more detailed, look at the animals, look at the vegetation. And I just brought myself down to taking the Death Valley National Park, which kind of like left it alone for a while now, even though I keep looking back into it. And I've kind of gone into the present study literature reviews now. And out of that, I came out with my abstract, which was biomimicry comes from bios meaning life and means imitate. The science discipline that studies nature's ideas and then imitates to solve human problems. Biomimicry is being used more and more in fields such as architecture, business, engineering, and design. This project looks into how we can survive in harsh desert climates by adapting nature and into how we build and live as humans. The main focus was to look into the ecosystem of the California Mojave Desert by seeing how flora and faunas adapt within the climate and see how I could extract and mimic on species that live within the surrounding area. By doing so, I can create a sustainable environment that will combine nature and architecture by using biomimicry as a stepping stone in how we design in certain areas around the world. This thesis will provide illustrative process that will encompass biomimicry methodology to generate sustainable architecture in desert climates. With that, I was able to really look into more into the architecture of deserts. I kind of looked into precedent studies and that designed into architecture dealing with desert climates and what I did, I talked to White some more and kind of where I could find like this kind of precedent studies and he gave me a bunch of great ideas and precedents that I could look into. And with that, I was able to decide, well, I know what I kind of want with my program, and I wanted to create a desert learning center. And I've kind of narrowed the location of where I want to, even though I'm still looking into it. I have 4 places that I'm looking into right now in the Death Valley. Right now it's the Stone Valley area, Scotty Castle area, the Stone Wells, Stone Pipe Wells, the Furnace Creek, and the dunes, which are pretty much sand dunes. And I'm trying to figure out, well, which one do I really want to work with? And I really kind of set up a plan to go to there and visit during this winter break. Pretty much my work plan has been, I really didn't start work plan until we started the semester. It was just pretty much resource gathering and information. Right now, I'm kind of like, probably like, I guess with the work plan I turned in, it's like kind of like a week behind, even though I pretty much got done my stuff. I'm starting my literature reviews, and I have one of my precedent studies. But I'm kind of like juggling all 3 of them together. That's pretty much where I am. I've also been looking at besides biomimicry, like the biometrics and the biomorphism, which kind of starts like the mechanics and the form of it, just to have a better broad look at the bigger picture of biomimicry. And also try to incorporate some disciplines and principles, which will be my chapter 2, which is going on right now. And that's pretty much where I am.
Are you gonna look at the animals that live in that environment? Use like the methods to survive that kind of living?
Yes, that's what I'm doing. I'm looking at I've kind of like contact with the national park. And I kind of told them like this is what I'm doing for my thesis. I want some information because I want to send like topographic maps and animals and plants that live in their area. They kind of send me back the information of plants and animals. They didn't send me the topographic, which I was kind of disappointed. I was probably so I have to go over there and buy me like the map or something when I get over there. But I do have plants and animals, so I've been looking into that. One of the plants I've been looking into is a cactus, which sustains kind of harnesses the water, keeps it up. So I've been looking into that. Some animals I've been looking into, lizards. But it's kind of like it's there. I just really haven't touched it until I know I'm going to eventually have to touch it. Hopefully touch it somewhere in like October. Application as a learning center, nature learning center. Kind of been building like the program already. I want to have some classrooms, exhibition areas, outdoor exhibition areas. I'm trying to connect it to trails, so if you go over there, you can travel and do trails and teach you. And I want to also have night observation deck. So if like at nighttime, I know it's real pretty. At nighttime, you can see all the stars and everything. So I'm trying to combine the nature into the building.
And then the building is going to be
It is.
and then the exterior of the building is going to
I'm trying to incorporate both, like the kind of like the natural ventilation and solar energy with water collection, especially in that area. There's lack of water or harness that area with water collection. So there's yeah, so by studying the animals and plants and how they adapt to like that hot climate with the lack of water, how can I bring that into my building, encompass that?
Yeah, like the cactus.
Yeah, like the cactus. There's a couple lizards and plants that I could like extract from to create a building. Yeah.
So where is the line drawn between engineering and architecture when it comes to environment? Because I feel like, because traditionally, like when I look at environmental things, never read that book, another class. But it was mainly about engineering different things in order to create buildings. So it would be type of skin or different type of device that you can use in order to create I guess whatever products or whatever it may be. But how is it architectural? Is it just within the form of the building, or can you still be architectural as far as like developing spaces that I guess are biomimetic?
That's good.
I think biomimicry is kind of like both because with the concept of the tree is overhanging stuff to provide shading to the roof and keep it out so the shading the person who are sitting on it. While after they're doing a building, you could apply the same concept where it's overhang to provide shading, but at the same time you have to consider the structure. Which is the engineering part of it because it's not done properly when it's totally affected. So at some point you have to meet the two, but it's not the same and almost. Is it 50% of each part is going to be 80%, 20% of one? So
I think one of your, if I'm remembering our conversation, right, one of your explorations is you're intending to use both the poetic and metaphoric inspirations out of biomimicry and also the nuts and bolts of biomimicry. So it would be engineering. I think an interesting finding when you're done would be your observations about which of those camps wound up being most in play. Did it wind up being kind of a nuts and bolts project? Was there a balance of the artistic and the engineering? I think your immersion and the application will help you discover that, at least in terms of that particular instance. Somebody can say something.
Yeah, so you're going to visit the site there.
No, I'm doing that in December.
And then also, I was thinking, you mentioned engineering. I think the architecture is just how you interpret biological processes. So you have so many to choose from. I think it's better. I think in some animals burrow themselves in the ground. You can have animals burrow in the ground, with the fences coming out, or you can have animals that have the shape of the cactus. And so, you have how you're going to interpret which biological processes take place in the area.
And I think to follow up that, I think one of your first tasks once you get into the flora and fauna of the area extract all the strategies that are in play to know what your menu is. And then you can begin to do these things. Which one of these things do you want to? Not one of these things. Which of these things?
No, I was gonna ask the same thing if he was gonna like take the best thing from the we found from the tree or the cactus and put it all into one building.
That's the idea of the method.
So, back when we're talking about like the spaces, so I was wondering maybe you could even incorporate, I guess, like the capillary system of the cactus into how you arrange or the program instead of just, I guess, putting your idea of program on there, but kind of look at the desert or certain things grow or how certain animals, have certain things in their body and kind of design your program around that. Maybe, your bathroom could be on the ground. To think of like how the programming or how to design the systems within each of the plants, and then how you can in turn place that on the architecture of the program.
You said something briefly that I think is helpful. The overall thing is sustainability, and it's biomimicry. Was it biometrics and biomorphism? Those are the two branches that come out of biometrics is the nuts and bolts engineering part. Biomorphism is the overall conceptual form making, space making. I think that structure is important as a way to understand what you're doing. It clarifies this notion that it's going to be involved in both camps. You're going to be having some mechanics in the building as well as some poetics. For me, it's not a matter of choosing from a big menu. For me, it's a matter of getting as much of your menu into the building. The challenge is to see how totally driven and saturated the building can be with not just a few selected things. The idea would be there's nothing we can point to in the building that wasn't driven by finance. So everything in the building, space, circulation, wall, roof, structure, connections, meeting room, anything we can name, you can show us how it was inspired by memory, either directly, because it was a true desert process, or indirectly through medical or implication, or intuitive service. I'm happy to hear you can go out there. That's not going to be a short trip, obviously. Because there's always a little bit of a danger in picking a site that you haven't visited. It doesn't mean that sometimes the thesis doesn't select a site that you're going to get at web. That has happened before. The challenge is to give them information to have a sense for the site beyond the obvious. Also, I sense a little bit of a, I'll use the word misfit. If you just take the idea of biomimicry, you want as rich a biology around your site as you can get. A lot of choices in plants, a lot of choices in animals. That has a little bit of a misfit with what you said next to it, which was you want to try it in the most severe setting possible, which sort of implies you're going to have not that many choices of plants. I'd be more inclined to pick a site where you have a lot of plants and a lot of animals to choose from, so that you're not hurting for biomimicry inspirations. Because if you're in a super severe climate, you've only got a few plants and a few animals, that's going to kind of scope down your richness of the options. What else comes up for you guys?
First thing,
Since the configuration.
first thing I think is kind of like a living building. At all times, just like you said, everything that he's going to do from the structure to the windows to the treatment, it should be up to biochemistry strategy, or, you know, the way the structure is, kind of the cactus and the trees, stuff like that. So, I guess, yeah.
I was wondering if you're getting money to travel out there.
Yeah. No, I'm not getting that. That's coming out of the pocket.
You got any family out there?
Yeah, I have family in California.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm recommending too that you go, I lived a lot of years in Tucson. Tucson's got a world famous desert museum. So I'm hoping he's going to go to Tucson and see the Arizona desert, which does a lot of this stuff. Not as intensely as you're looking to do, but it does a great job of disclosing what the desert's about, especially.
I know Vegas has a nature center that was sustainable also.
Right.
It's kind of doesn't have the biomimicry, but has the sustainability. I'm going to be stopping by there.
I think you're smart to research your path and see what you can pick up along the way. That's very good. Okay, next Monday, you're up, right? And then there's a blank, which you don't really carry the whole flag. Unless you come in and get it stirred up and we use it. We'll see what happens. So, if you've got your drafts of your one literature source and its analysis, I'll take those. Please make sure your names are on them. I'll look those over and get it back to you. Meanwhile, what I'd like to recommend you begin to look at, and I know that it feels premature, but I want you to do it anyway, is push on your application a little bit. If you haven't really thought about your building type, at least have 3 options. If you know generally what your building type is, a list of rooms would be a good thing. If you haven't picked your site yet, maybe you have 3 options. Pick your site, maybe begin to collect some information. So we haven't really talked about that for a while. And that's something that might be interesting. And I know to a large extent, probably, think the pieces I'm asking for are probably not in the flow of the work. But hopefully you can see that what I'm asking for is eventually going to be needed. And one reason why I'm asking for things when I am is to keep us touching all these things. None of these things are final and polished. I'm trying to avoid that kind of stuff where we get more product oriented. Remind you again that as you produce these pieces, I would share them if you think they're together enough. I would share them with the chairs and use them as a basis for conversation.
What's the average length of a literature review?
So,
What's the average length of a literature review?
oh, I don't know. I'll make something up. I would say, if you got a, first of all, they won't be on your list if they're not pretty good. So a short, super short one, I'd be surprised at that. If it's super short, you can get much out of it, probably should be. So I would say 2 pages, maybe 3. Could be more depending upon how much you elaborate. It's probably not 1, and it's probably not 2. It's somewhere. And they can be uneven. You know, some of them you sit with and you keep getting more and more out of it. Remember the category that I was suggesting that you try to treat it. So each literature review can be different length than the other. You know, I wouldn't get preoccupied with page budgets on anything. I would just immerse myself in the task and let the pages fall.
When writing the thesis, do we write like the past tense or future?
Yeah, you asked me that.
Yeah.
When you're quoting something, obviously you've got to stay in the tense of the thing you quoted. In general is kind of a dangerous thing. I would say in general you're writing in the present tense because the thesis is not reporting on something that you've done in the past. The thesis is reporting on a live project. But that question opens on to a much bigger thing, which is what person do you write in? For example, in the introduction, when you're talking about your own personal interest in something, you can afford to use I and me and personal. Once you're into the body of the report, though, we shouldn't be seeing what happens. You should be writing technical language, which is third person, writing about things. And it's not a personal kind of reporting. And then at the end of the conclusions, when you're reflecting, that might be indicated over back to the first person, where you're sort of reporting on how it went, how you think it went. So the idea of what tense to write in also relates to the person to write in, the whole kind of language stuff. And maybe what we can do is spend some class time on that too.
What do you think of a person who references themselves as you in the text?
References themselves what?
As you, like they're asking themselves a question.
Is that in the literature review?
Yeah.
Where does this happen?
In this book, at the beginning of every chapter, he poses a question and it's like he's kind of talking to himself.
Well, if it's out of the book, then you can use it. It's another judgment whether or not something is useful to the literature. But if something's in the book, no matter what form it takes, and you think it fits your thesis, then I would use it. So the fact that he's asking himself a question or maybe thinking out loud, that doesn't matter whether it's applicable to the thesis. What other questions come up with respect to that?
As far as the precedent analysis, does the precedent have to be built or can it be conceptual? Can be like a conceptual or abstract stuff?
That's a good question. Well, the preference would be for it to have been built. Let's just say you find a dynamite exemplar of an idea, and you've got good documentation on it. It's got narrative about it. It's got good images. It's got maybe a critic's article. The danger in unbuilt stuff is that the images are not fully fleshed out. You're not going to get photos of the building. And maybe not enough has been said about it. But I'm not going to say out of hand it's not allowed, because depending upon how you're using it and what you're studying it for, it depends on that. I would actually share that question. Okay. So to me, my big answer is it depends. But I'm tilting a little bit toward being a little worried about it, because of the problems that tend to be embedded in that stuff. That's not to say categorically don't do it, because there is no categorical answer. What else are you running into? Okay, so next Monday, you're gonna talk, and Wednesday we'll move into some other things.